All started with freedom. My parents fled communism in Hungary. So I was born in England, a free country, but a country in rapid decline. My earliest political memory was Mrs. Thatcher, the first British leader in a generation with the courage to fight back for freedom. Our family didn't have money. My mom worked in a shoe store, my dad in construction. But like so many working class people, they just wanted a better life. My parents were so proud when I made it to Oxford University, and then when I got a job with the Conservative Party, working for Margaret Thatcher. She unleashed the spirit of enterprise in England. She inspired me. I started a business, even a couple of restaurants. That is a tough business. Later, I helped elect a Prime Minister, worked in 10 Downing Street. In 2012, we moved to America, to California, the ultimate expression of America, the home of freedom. Or it should be. I taught at Stanford University, started a company, wrote books, hosted a TV show. I lived the California dream. I raised my family here, made my life here, became an American. It was one of the proudest days of my life, but also a reminder of the madness, the masks, the lockdowns, the school closures. Look at these pictures, the chaos, the crime, the collapse of the California dream. This is not just any other state. California means to America what America means to the world. Let's make California the land of opportunity again. Great jobs, great homes, great kids. Let's make California an inspiration again, the very best of America. There's only one way to do that. We've got to end the one-party rule that got us into this mess. It's time to end the years of Democrat failure. It's time for a new future. That's why I'm running for governor, to make this beautiful state that we love so much truly golden again. Hello everyone and welcome to the French Laundry in Napa. There it is, the French Laundry, the scene of the crime, Gavin Newsom's crime in the pandemic. Who can forget that this place was the ultimate symbol of the elitism and the hypocrisy that we saw during the COVID lockdowns. Here in California, we had the longest and most extreme lockdowns of any state, the longest and most extreme school closures of any state. We cannot let them forget. And the reason? These pictures. There he is, Gavin Newsom, right there in the French Laundry, in the middle of the pandemic. This is the proof that they knew their rules were wrong. If they really believed that all the nonsense, the lockdowns, the school closures, the cruel closures of small businesses up and down our state, if they really believed that they were so important for protecting people's health, they would not have been dining indoors, maskless, here at the French Laundry. They knew it was wrong, but they did it anyway. And we're here today to remind everyone about the costs of those cruel and destructive lockdowns. We're going to be joined in a moment by people who will speak to the pain and the suffering that was caused during those lockdowns. But the elitism and the hypocrisy didn't end there. This out-of-touch ruling elite in Sacramento continues to behave as if they can get away with anything, do anything, then they'll never be held accountable. We're here to say that it is time for change in California. It is time for openness and accountability and government that is in touch with people, not ruling above them like some arrogant elite. That's the change that I want to bring when I'm governor of California. In a moment, we're going to lay out the specific changes that I want to make so that we run California in a new way, in a more open and transparent way. Before that, we're going to hear from our guests here today. And even before we get to them, I want to read a statement from someone who was planning to be with us here today. Unfortunately, she has a family emergency. She couldn't make it, but she asked me to read this statement. This is Erica Kios, who is, as you know, if you've been following this story closely, the hairdresser, her salon in San Francisco, where Nancy Pelosi, another one of the COVID elitist hypocrites, again proved that they knew their rules were ridiculous by going maskless in the hair salon when telling everyone else that that was dangerous and a threat to public health. Here is Erica's statement. Under normal circumstances, Nancy Pelosi walking into a neighborhood hair salon wouldn't make national news. But it wasn't normal circumstances. It was the height of a pandemic when hair salons across California were shut down by mandate, with Pelosi herself among the loudest voices demanding everyone follow the rules. Yet there she was, caught on video, walking through my shuttered salon without a mask, like the rules didn't apply to her. And when people rightly called out the hypocrisy, she didn't take responsibility. She actually demanded that I apologize, accusing me of setting her up. That is how out of touch and arrogant the political elite in California have become. I lost my business. I had to move my family. Meanwhile, the people who imposed these rules on all of us just kept living their lives as if none of it applied to them. That's why I support this event and why I'm grateful to Steve Hilton for calling out the rules for thee, not for me culture that still thrives in Sacramento. It is time for real accountability. We deserve better. Yes, we do. Thank you, Erica. Now I want to welcome our first speaker today, my friend, my colleague at Golden Together, the policy organization that I started a few years ago to work on California's many policy problems, former Democrat leader of the state Senate in California, now a Republican, Gloria Romero.
Thank you, Steve. It's so good to be with you. Let me tell you that I did serve in Sacramento, and I have seen with my own eyes the power of a monopoly, the power of a one-party state to shut down information, dialogue, transparency. I proudly join Steve Hilton here today to welcome in the sun, a new era of sunshine in government and a call for transparency. And let's think about it for a moment, because what this French Laundry behind us today represents, it's become almost an American icon, a California icon, certainly. Think about what you feel when you see the American flag or the Statue of Liberty or the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. Freedom, liberty, valiant fighters. The French Laundry has become a symbol of the elitism of the California ruling class, where during the pandemic, when we were told to stay home, shut our doors, do not go visit your families in nursing homes, don't even have Thanksgiving dinner together, don't go to church, but the bars could stay open. Don't send your kids to school, but meanwhile, Gavin could afford to send his. And as Erica found out as well, too, don't get your hair cut, but Nancy Pelosi could walk in. Likewise, on an infamous night, Gavin Newsom sat at this wonderful dining restaurant, which became symbolic of the rules for thee, but not for me, because of the power of a one-party state that was able just to decree stuff. In Los Angeles County, where I live, a jogger on the beach was arrested even for being out in public. It was absolute madness, but they were able to get away with it because the machine of one-party politics ruled. But those days are over, and they're over with the announcement of the candidacy of Steve Hilton for governor. I'm a former Democrat. I changed parties last year. I proudly support the fight back against Gavin Newsom and one-party rule with Steve Hilton, because those rules for thee, but not for me, they continue in Sacramento. quiet NDAs that are being written and signed, which basically keep from the public our right to know how our tax dollars are being spent in settlements. They are constructing background, underground tunnels and hallways to basically enable the legislators, too spineless, to be able to be captured on film and in the media how they have voted on bills that we, the people, support, but their donors don't. When Steve Hilton is elected governor with our support, those days will be over. But we wanted to be here today to just walk down memory lane, the French Laundry, and our call to end one-party rule. We cannot afford the silence any longer. It's time for a change. Steve Hilton will help lead that.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much, Gloria. What a great fighter for common sense in California. And you're right, that you got the NDAs, the secret tunnels under the Capitol to shield the politicians from the people, on and on. These are all things that we're going to address in the plan that we're going to lay out today and more. But now I want to welcome Pastor Andy Springer. Please join us and tell us your story, because we've got to never forget, never allow them to sweep under the rug the cruelty and the pain caused by their lockdowns. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Steve. Hey, I appreciate Steve Hilton, and I'm glad I'm able to be here today. My name is Andy Springer. I'm the pastor of Heartwood Church in Rohnert Park in Sonoma County, sister county to Napa County. It was November 2020 that our governor spent the evening here dining with his family. Just a month before that, he gave us 13 pages of COVID restrictions for our churches in the lockdown. Beyond connecting and gathering, our faith-based communities within our cities and towns have a couple things in mind. Number one, supporting one another and those that come together. Our churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples were mandated to suspend personal in-person services and to create an on-the-fly online production utilizing unfamiliar platforms, live streaming, and hosting beyond awkward Zoom meetings to call that church. We were told that we could no longer act like the church in California. We had to buy cameras, lights, and present activities of entertainment for the masses. These unequipped churches launched a very forgettable production, spending enormous amounts of money and time and resources in an effort to stay essential, because our governor deemed us non-essential. In a time when people were dying and going into eternity, our governor had the audacity to tell our faith-based community we were not necessary. Are you kidding me right now? January 2018 to March 2020, our church was in a moment of recovery. Heartwood Church had gone down to 8 senior citizens, and by the spring of 2020, we were reaching 120 in our regular services, and then came the lockdowns. That COVID lockdown that lasted 3 years until they officially in February 2023 gave us permission to no longer be in an emergency situation. Thankfully, our shift in ministry allowed us to survive. We were one of few churches, by the way, that survived. Many wound up folding up their tents and closing up their doors and leaving. Thankfully, our shift to online services and presenting a hybrid opportunity for people to watch and see became opportunity for us relatively quickly because of a donor that gave us the money to buy the equipment necessary. This change, by the way, affected us deeply. This changed everything we'd been doing for 2.5 years at Heartwood Church. For us, it was less about gathering and more about going into our community. Our conversations as a leadership team were centered on how we could fit in our community, how we could do things to provide for our neighbors. You may not know this, but most faith-based communities do not exist to huddle. Like a football team, they huddle to activate the play. But he told us we couldn't even huddle. We offer preschool opportunities, after-school opportunities, food and shelter and clothing and vast resources. By the way, all free to the community. Our churches give, and they were told they could no longer do so. It was about service for us. It was about spending our money, making memories that last forever for families in our area. It was about renting water slides and bounce houses and hosting free family fun events like Easter in the Park, neighborhood barbecues, Father's Day mutters, drive-in movie nights, split-splash water baths, and Christmas programs for seniors, walk through Bethlehem experiences for families, lighting of trees, and Christmas caroling. It was about bringing Santa Claus onto our campus so he could give away hundreds of gifts to kids and families in need. Heartwood Church was all about partnering with our city, taking on projects to beautify areas of our city, to meet needs of families and others in our area, encouraging our neighbors to continue to take steps forward in their lives. Just before COVID, we were able to help 6 families get off the streets and into permanent housing. At COVID, we were told to do nothing else. At Easter 2020, we invented the idea of Easter in the parking lot. We hosted an Easter in the parking lot service on Saturday night and Sunday morning. I got a call from our city manager that evening asking me never to do that again.
Amazing.
Homelessness is rampant. Businesses are being shut down. Families are being kicked out. There's all kinds of things going on around us, and our churches are being told we can't do anything. We were used to hosting backpack giveaways, providing food and shelter and clothing. We were able to support kids experiencing homelessness in our schools, and now we're being told we can't even get involved. Our members got involved as coaches and teachers and service providers, and we were all forced to shut it down. We were forced to choose between religious freedom and our reputation in the community. My board of supervisor, my current board of supervisor, local current supervisor, went as far as to say that people that did not adhere to their rules and their lockdowns were jerks. So now I'm a jerk because I want to serve the community. He told us we were even heartless enough to even want to kill his mother, endanger her health. Of course, faith-based leaders like me would not want to do something like that in our neighborhood, and every effort that we could put forth would be to support what was going on in our hurting families. We were told if we did anything in ministry, basically we were jerks that didn't care and were hateful. We trusted these people. The next time, by the way, I'm afraid when we get a wind of something like COVID in our state or in our local area, officials may not get the same privilege that they got when they shut us down. We thought they were going to do it for a little while. They gave us a little while of 3 years. We in good faith paused, and they requested us do what we did, shut down, lock up, and over time, they decided that we were no longer necessary. What I want to say in closing is this. I want to encourage you, if you still have a church in your neighborhood, even if you don't go, if you have a synagogue in your neighborhood, a temple or a faith-based community in your neighborhood still, would you go by and honor the leadership and say thank you for navigating the rough waters that were put in front of them because of the COVID lockdowns? While they were threatened with loss of reputation, unlawful restrictions, and a decline in attendance and increase in financial pressures, know this, they adapted their operations. They embraced technology that they were so unaware of, and they somehow continued their mission in your community. Despite all of the odds, they're still standing. With this one mission in mind, love your neighbor as yourself. Do this week. Go to that place of worship, shake hands with that leader, and tell them thank you. And if you have the means, give a donation to them. Help them out. Help them continue their mission to serve the community. But more important than all that, get a friend registered this week. Get 2 friends registered this week and get them to vote for Steve Hilton. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Even listening to that, I mean, you're just reminded of the insanity, and the rage is just coming back. I've got a lot to say about that in a moment and how we're going to hold people accountable. I just want to pick up on one thing. Andy said there we had good people who are trying to comply with these ridiculous rules. And even then, they came after them, didn't they? I mean, that's what we saw. That's why I wanted on the first day of my campaign, launching in the morning in Huntington Beach, and in the evening, we went to the Pineapple Hill Saloon in Los Angeles, because that was such a great example, a terrible example of what happened. You had a restaurant owner who did everything right, and still they came after her. She built a beautiful new patio to comply with their outdoor dining rules, which were ridiculous in the first place. And then they banned outdoor dining and punished this small business owner. That was the story of the pandemic, and we will not let them forget it. As I say, I have more to say in a moment, but I just want to close our speaker lineup today with Lisa Davidson, who is going to speak to us about probably the most cruel, the most vicious and upsetting aspect of all of this, that Gavin Newsom and the Democrats imposed on us here in California. And that is the impact on our children. Lisa.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. I really appreciate it. This is a very near and dear subject to my heart because of my son. When they locked down the schools, he was 17 and he was a junior in high school. And he was been diagnosed with ADHD when he was, in 4th or 5th grade, and he has struggled with school and struggled. He needed structure and consistency, and he started out his junior year doing really well, getting better grades than he had ever gotten in his life, and then they locked everything down, and he was at home. And I work, I'm a single parent, and so he was left home alone and to try to figure out and navigate online school, which did not work for him. And since he needed structure and didn't have it, he wouldn't log on. And it put him so far behind that when they finally let them back in his senior year, he was really far behind and he was not catching up as fast as he needed to graduate with his class. So the school put pressure on him to go to Adult Learning Center because he was in Napa because he was 18, and they said, why don't you go there and you can finish out and take your time and you can do that. And they put a lot of pressure, and I resisted, and they attacked me for resisting. Who am I? I'm just his mother. I live with him. I know him. I'm also a mental health therapist, so I knew how this would affect him mentally for not being in school. And they were sending him back to online with the adult learning. So he did that. It took him 1.5 years longer to finish. He still does not have his diploma. They didn't send it to him. So, but it took him 1.5 years. He finally finished. It kind of took the wind out of his sails. He was depressed. He had a lot of anxiety, which goes along with ADHD, and he is still not knowing what to do with his life and his direction. And he'll be 23 in June. And as a mental health therapist, I work in the schools, and I was worried about what this would do to those kids. And when I came back to the school, back to work, my colleague and I that were in the schools were doing risk assessments, suicide risk assessments on kids in 1st and 2nd grade. And we were doing these risk assessments at least one a week. And this was, we work grades K through high school. And we were doing risk assessments all the time when we first came back. These kids were so anxious and so depressed and didn't know how to behave in school because they had been out of school for so long and they had a lot of social problems. So this has been, I've worked really hard to try to help the community and the children in our schools with their mental health illness. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have a crisis in this, and I think it started when we all locked down our kids and wouldn't let them be social and grow up like they need to grow. And it hurt them mentally. And our test scores show it too, as well. So I appreciate you taking an interest in this because this is something that has been bothering me for years. And I've had nowhere to go or talk to about this, and saying, we need to take care of our kids because they have been forgotten in all of this. And our test scores are despicable. And this should not be like this in this country or in this state. So thank you, Steve, for all you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for being here today. It's heartbreaking, as we just saw, but it's also infuriating because everything we've just heard everything was totally avoidable and should have been avoided. And I just want to make this point really clear before I get on to the other areas of elitism that we've seen beyond the pandemic and the changes that we're proposing to tackle that. I want to make something really clear, which is that for those who may listen to this and say, well, yes, there was real hardship during the pandemic and people suffered, but it was necessary to protect people from the pandemic, from the virus. That is simply not true. It is simply not true. And even for those who say, well, yes, now we know that the lockdowns were unnecessary. Now we know that we shouldn't perhaps have closed schools. And you see that the New York Times, the Democrats, all these people now saying, well, yes, looking back on it, we shouldn't have done it. But we didn't know at the time. We did know at the time. Some of us said so at the time. Very few of us. But I was one of them. I was the first to stand up against the madness of the lockdowns and the school closures, and not after the event, but right at the beginning. In March 2020, on my show, I said very clearly, I had doctors on, medical professionals, to make clear that this virus was incredibly contagious, and therefore any attempt to stop it from spreading was pointless, that it affected elderly people the most severely, people with pre-existing conditions, most people barely at all. That the nature of the virus meant that all these rules that they put out there were ridiculous. 6 feet social distancing made no sense with a virus that was spread by airborne particle that traveled 30, 40, 50 feet. We knew that in March 2020, and still they persisted with a 6 feet social distancing nonsense. The masks they told us to wear, we knew at the time, it made no difference to the transmission of the virus because the particles were much smaller than the fabric the masks were made of. We knew all this at the time, and some of us said so. I said so. I stood up against it. At the time, they said that I was putting lives at risk. No, they were putting lives at risk, as we've just been hearing. And here's the thing I want to say for everyone thinking about the next election for governor here in California. As far as I'm concerned, anybody, anyone at all, who supported, encouraged these lockdowns and school closures is not fit to be governor of this great state. Is not fit to lead this great state. And I will personally make sure that every single candidate for governor is held to the standard of common sense and decency over what happened in the lockdowns. Now let's look ahead. In terms of the lockdowns, when I'm governor, I will immediately appoint a COVID Accountability Commission to investigate the decisions behind the nation's longest school closures and most restrictive lockdowns. This is not going to be some bureaucratic thing that costs a fortune and goes on forever. It will have a small, limited budget, and it will have a deadline of 6 months after the new administration takes office. It will focus also on the potential corruption involved in California's lockdowns and school closures, including whether political donations from the teacher unions affected the decision to keep schools closed longer than anywhere else in America. The COVID Accountability Commission. But now let's move on to the other areas where since the lockdown, as Gloria was outlining, we've seen this arrogant ruling elite, this out-of-touch behavior. NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, in the legislative process. What is this? It's a cover for corruption, for secret backroom deals. That's why we're here today, airing Sacramento's dirty laundry, telling you what's actually going on. They don't want you to know what's going on and how they make legislation. They don't want you to know about the secret deals. And that's why we will make sure there is a total ban on non-disclosure agreements in the legislative process. Some legislators and advocates have proposed banning them. We will make sure that the legislation that makes that happen is passed and enacted, or if it isn't, I'll make sure it happens one way or the other. We cannot have this kind of ridiculous secrecy around public policy that affects all of us in California. Number two, some of you may have noticed there's this project in Sacramento. If you go there, they've been building it almost as long as they've been building high-speed rail. It's called the Capitol Annex Project. They're building a new palace for themselves in Sacramento, and I mean palace. They're spending a fortune of our money shipping marble from Italy back and forth for their new palace. And as Gloria mentioned, they're putting in secret tunnels so they don't have to encounter the public. That's got to end. We will institute an immediate pause on the Capitol Annex project pending a full cost-benefit and transparency review. How can we be spending money on Italian marble for politicians when, as we saw today, we've got a massive deficit in our finances? Absolutely outrageous. Another aspect of the corruption that's been hidden from view for too long, the government unions, Gavin Newsom's biggest donors by far, over $21 million Gavin Newsom has received from the government unions, dwarfing donations from any other source. And of course they get favors in exchange. It's called pay to play. Amazingly, the legislators in San Francisco passed a law banning pay to play for local government. It's called the Levine Act. It bars officials from voting on matters involving contributions of $250 or more within 12 months. Gavin Newsom's had $21 million from the government unions. So we will work one way or another to bring that same principle, no pay to play, no corruption, to the state legislature in Sacramento. The Public Records Act, amazingly, which applies to everyone else in California, doesn't apply to the legislature. That means that politicians in Sacramento are shielded from the public knowing about their own misconduct, including sexual misconduct. That's why sexual harassment by politicians in Sacramento has been kept secret. That is outrageous, and it's going to end. We will apply the California Public Records Act to the legislature. And finally, I know there's a lot of opportunity to criticize and attack the media, but I believe in the media as a source of accountability for the public. I believe in a strong and free press, and I want a strong and free press to be there in Sacramento to hold our politicians to account. What they've done ever since the pandemic is stop that from happening. So we will restore full press access to lawmakers, reversing the restrictions they put in place to stop them from going up to the politicians and asking them questions and holding them accountable directly. And this is just the start. There will be a new era of openness and accountability when I'm the governor. We will let the sunshine in, as Gloria Romero mentioned. And you can't see this because in front of me is a beautiful American flag. And that's what we're going to be focused on, what that flag represents. Freedom, the values of our Constitution, not the values behind me in the French Laundry debacle that Gavin Newsom exposed with his hypocrisy and elitism. We're going to look forward with American spirit and values, not behind us with the French Laundry, elitism and hypocrisy. That's going to be the future for California. That's how we make California golden again. Thank you very much for being with us today, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh! Yes, yes, yes.
I got my congratulations 30-year letter one day, the next day it's termination.
fan-
back when you have the vax, when the eyes are open. Nothing.
a fantastic question, really important. I'll just repeat it for everyone who couldn't hear. Will there be compensation and recognition of those people who are fired for not taking the vaccine? I feel so incredibly strongly about this. I feel so angry about this aspect of the pandemic as well. And let's be clear, before everyone goes running away with the idea that this was necessary for public health, the vaccine mandates. That is totally false. As my friend Jay Bhattacharya made clear at the time, with me, we made the point together. He's now thankfully running the National Institutes of Health. What a brilliant, sweet revenge that is for Jay Bhattacharya to be there running NIH. I want to be really clear about this. The vaccine was never intended, never designed to stop transmission of the virus. They never claimed it. The emergency use authorization for the COVID vaccine never mentioned anything about transmission. It only tried, in their view, to offer private personal protection, to protect you, not anyone else. And so, as Jay put it at the time, it conferred a private benefit, not a public benefit. And therefore, there was absolutely no justification on scientific, public health, or any other grounds for a vaccine mandate. So I absolutely, strongly agree. Every single person who lost their job as a result of vaccine mandates should be compensated, at the very least, if that's not possible, or reinstated, at the very least get an apology for what happened to them. It was totally outrageous, and another example of what we must not forget, because if we forget these things, we'll allow the same mistakes to happen again in the future. Lady.
Steve, would you be interested in having a Doge type of accounting? People come into California to find out where all of the useful or unuseful, more likely, spending has gone under Gavin Newsom's reign of this spending and all of the.
So the question was about auditing California for all the wasted spending. I have a lot more to say about that tomorrow. Just today, Gavin Newsom presented his budget for the year ahead. Tomorrow in Sacramento, I will be making my formal response as candidate for governor to Gavin Newsom's budget. And I'm going to have a lot to say about it there. But the short answer is yes. Here's what's happened in California. In the last 10 years, they've doubled the budget. Even after inflation has gone up by 50%. Does anyone think everything's twice as good? No. It's all worse. They've doubled the budget. Everything's worse. Where's all the money going? That's what we need to find out.
It's just a question about our voting and election integrity here in California, because it's bad.
Yes. Gloria, you've talked about this a lot. Do you want to take that one?
Your vote is your voice. And the foundation of a representative form of government, a democracy, is the ability of the citizens to go out and cast a vote. Have a campaign, evaluate the candidates, choose what's important for you and your family. So yes, election integrity.
About so much the voting as who comes up with these winners. And I mean, it was too big to rig in this last election. How can we make that happen here?
Well, you've got to have, again, to the protection of the ballot. Who has the right to vote? I know that there's a movement underway to protect the vote, to make sure that there is ID, that there's citizenship, that you are who you are when you go out to cast a vote. And one of the reasons I'm a strong supporter of Steve Hilton is because he is a naturalized citizen. He understands the power of being a citizen with the right to vote in this precious state and country, and he will be our fearless leader in making sure that that integrity is protected, and that we, again, to audit, we look at it, we examine the books, get rid of the dead people who cannot vote, who should not be voting, and we've got to make sure that we do that, because you're right, unless we clean up those voter rolls and protect our right to vote, we will keep getting some rather questionable election outcomes. Much more to be done, but we start there.
Thank you, Gloria. All right, let's have one more question.
Can I talk fire insurance?
Please, yes, fire insurance.
real estate, and I'm a building contractor, and I've been here for over 30 years. And we have a lot of assets that are way exceeding over the $3 million California Fair Plan, to where we feel that my wife and I, we feel like we overloaded ourselves. If we get a massive wildfire again, there goes all of our profits, gone, millions. So now we're thinking, what do we do? Do we plan on perhaps leaving California, selling before we lose our homes, lose our investments? Right now we're doing one of our own projects, and we're going to have that to exceed over $10 million when it's done on the market. It could be a $7 million complete total profit. If that burns this year, we're out. Over $7 million, just like that. Other investments, $3 million, $4 million, could just be gone. What are we going to do about that? California Fair Plan is not going to protect us.
So the question is about the insurance crisis that, again, has been caused directly by Democrat policy. That they caused this by artificially capping the rates for insurance companies for years to pander to the public instead of being straight with them. It's another example of the lack of openness and accountability, and also messing around with all the ways in which insurance companies run their business so they can price in future risk. So they've caused this crisis. Now we will inherit the crisis, and we have to do something about it. So there's two aspects to this. First of all, we have to do more to stop the wildfires threatening people's property in the first place. And as we've seen, we've had hopeless wildfire management because they've prioritized climate extremism instead of common sense measures to protect communities and homes. So that needs to change. Just as the water policy needs to change so that we don't have this situation where water is diverted for these bogus environmental uses. So there's a lot we can do to actually reduce the risk that you face. On the insurance front, I've spoken to the industry, and they tell me that if we put in place the reforms that will let them get closer to a real pricing of future risk, to make the technical changes to their processes that they do in other states. Florida's just done this. They've made a change to deal with their problem that arose from lawsuits connected to insurance. Florida has just made sensible reforms. The market is coming back, insurers are coming back, rates are coming down. That happened pretty quickly in Florida. So I think that once I'm elected, and also that we need to elect a very strong insurance commissioner, that's a very important position. We need a really good candidate for insurance commissioner. I think common sense reforms can actually make that turnaround happen pretty quickly. We've seen it happen in other states. We just need to do it here. But the story is thank you very much. The story is the same, which is for years now in California, and I'll just close with this. We've had the triumph of ideology over practicality, of extreme left-wing ideology that makes no sense. You see it in relation to water and energy and the size and bloat in the government, the bureaucracy. It's impossible to do anything in California, to build a home, to run a business. Everything's a nightmare. Working families are struggling. The cost of living is so high. All of this is the direct result of Democrat policy. The good news is it doesn't have to be like this. We can change this. Just as they made it bad, we can make it good. We can turn things around. We can make this state what it should be. The best place in America to start and raise a family, to start and run and grow a business. That's what I want to achieve for California. I love this state. I cannot stand to see what's being done to it. That's why I'm running for governor. Please join our movement for change. Go to stevehiltonforgovernor.com. Stay in touch with our campaign, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you, everybody.